I've been a small-town cop for 15 years. After this recent case, I'm thinking of retiring. We meet again, Redditors. Once more, it's me, the small-town Minnesota cop with an unfortunate penchant for getting himself mixed up with the bizarre, possibly supernatural, and sometimes downright terrifying things that occasionally happen when he's not busy handing out speeding tickets, breaking up bar fights, and once in a while throwing a drunk farmer in a jail cell for giving his wife a broken nose because the Vikings lost to the Giants during the big game. They say bad things come in threes, so I suppose I should have seen this coming. Yes, it happened once again to yours truly. But after this time, I'm giving serious thought to just calling it quits and ending my career in law enforcement. Maybe getting a job as a park ranger or a fishing guide. This one was the worst one yet. Worse than the Garrity disappearance back in 14 and my strange encounter with the mysterious young woman who called herself Shirley Ann McDougal back in 19. Worse than both of them combined, even. I've pretty shaken up by this recent one. Hell, to be perfectly honest, I'm fucking scared. Not so much by what happened, but by the implications of it. If there's any truth to this one, then, well, it happened last Friday night. I wasn't even on duty when it happened. It was my night off. Things have changed since the last time we got together. The chief retired last fall after over 40 years. Ostensibly it was because of health issues, but I have my doubts. He still seemed pretty spry and healthy the last time I saw him at the retirement party we threw him at the station. He took his wife and moved to Colorado to live out his golden years as God intended, with a fishing rod in one hand and a can of hams in the other, as he put it. He was grinning when he said it, but it seemed a little forced, and there seemed to be some other expression lurking beneath the grin, and in his eyes. Something dark and haunted. I think maybe the denouncement of the McDougal case was the last straw for him. They ID'd the skeleton they found in the trunk of that rusted old Buick through old dental records and DNA after someone provided the state police with an anonymous tip to the young woman's identity. Yep, sure enough, it was Shirley. I don't think it was just her and poor old Mrs. Garrity that was getting to him, either. I have to remind myself that the chief had been on the force a hell of a lot longer than me and Jerry and Pete and Vance. But God only knows what he encountered during that time. He probably has his own share of stories to tell, if he was so inclined. Anyway, when the chief stepped down, Vance took his place due to seniority. He's a competent cop with enough experience to make a decent replacement, but it's just not quite the same, and I don't think I'll ever think of him as the chief. Vance's first order of business, with the town council's approval, was to expand the police force in order to keep up with the town's increasing population. He hired 3 new officers. He also pressured the council to increase the police department's budget. And with the extra funds, we got some much-needed newer cruisers, gear, and even radios. The downside to all these improvements was that with 3 extra warm bodies, there weren't as many hours to go around. So my work schedule had been cut back some. I can't really complain. I'm a single guy, I own my own place, and town living is cheap. Plus, I really did need a break. So last Friday night I was driving down one of our many rural country roads on my way into town with no other objective than to buy a case of beer and get drunk watching TV. It was just past 8 p.m., a pleasant spring evening with a clear, starry sky. I had the radio on, listening to an old Blackhawk song I liked as a kid, the one about the guy whose friend moved up in the mountains to paint the world. I glanced at the dashboard clock and saw it was 8:08 p.m. I reached for a cigarette from the pack of Winstons on the passenger seat. Suddenly there was a blinding flash of light that filled all the windows of my car. Bright, white light that seemed to fill the entire world. It was like being at ground zero at the moment of a nuclear explosion, in the millisecond before the blast vaporizes your entire body. I shouted and slammed on the brakes, raising an arm to shield my face, squeezing my eyes shut. I thought for sure I was about to die. The Blackhawk song playing on my radio cut off abruptly. I sat there for probably at least a minute, my heart racing, hearing nothing but silence. Finally, I cautiously opened my eyes. The light was gone. Everything was back to normal. Jesus, I muttered to myself. What the fuck was that? Bewildered, but relieved to be alive, I put my foot back on the gas pedal. But my car wouldn't move. The engine had stopped. I turned the key over and over again, but it wouldn't start. My car was dead. Shit! I got out, popped the hood, and raised it to inspect the engine. My car was only 3 years old and I had just had it serviced last month. I couldn't figure out what the hell was wrong with it. But then again, I am a police officer, not an auto mechanic. Frustrated, I pulled off my phone to call AAA, but my phone wouldn't turn on. Like my car, it was also dead, even though the battery was still more than half charged. Now I was really getting pissed off. I was still 3 miles from town, stranded in the middle of nowhere with no way to call for help. This was turning into a pretty shitty evening. I stood there for a couple minutes and was just about resigned to the fact that I was going to have to walk the rest of the way into town to call a tow truck, when fortune smiled. I saw a pair of headlights coming down the road, approaching from the direction of town. I waved down the driver, and as the car got closer, I realized it was one of the town's new police cruisers. It slowed down and I saw the driver was none other than my regular partner, Jerry. I didn't spare the time to consider what an unusual coincidence this was. I was just overjoyed that now I didn't have to go on foot to get my car towed. My relief was short-lived though. Before I could open my mouth to explain my troubles, I saw the look on Jerry's face. He looked deeply worried, and more than a little scared. "Jesus Christ," he said when he saw me. "Where the fuck have you been? We've been trying to get a hold of you for almost an hour." Bad luck. My car broke down and my phone did. I stopped abruptly as his words registered. "Wait, what the hell do you mean, almost an hour?" "My phone just died like 10 minutes ago. Vance has been ringing your phone since 8:15. I even tried calling you myself. I was heading your way to see what the hell happened to you." I looked at him, confused. "Jer, I've only been stuck here for 10 minutes at most." "Well, maybe your phone conked out before your car did and you didn't notice." "No, it happened almost simultaneously. It was the craziest fucking thing. What the hell time is it anyway?" He glanced at his dashboard. 9:06. This threw me for a loop. "What? Jerry, that shit is not possible." I saw the time right before my car broke down. It was 8:08. There's no way I've been standing here for the better part of an hour. I was so bewildered by now that I had almost entirely forgotten about that strange, blinding flash of light that had seemed to presage my car breaking down. "Shit, man, I don't know what to tell you," Jerry answered with a shrug. "All I know is we've been trying to get a hold of you for damn near an hour." "Why have you been trying to call me?" I asked him with slowly dawning trepidation. Jerry looked at me gravely. There was an all-too-familiar expression of fear on his face. One I recognized from that day nearly a decade before, when we had driven out to Mrs. Garrity's farmhouse. "Something's happened to the Barker family," he said. "They're missing. It looks like a home invasion, abduction type deal." "Shit," I muttered. The Barkers in question were John and Sophie, a couple who lived on the outskirts of town. Coincidentally, not terribly far from where old Mrs. Garrity had once lived, and their 3 children. John Barker worked at a tractor supply store in the next town. He continued, "The chief, meaning Vance, wants everyone available. It's an all-hands-on-deck situation." He looked away from me, gulping nervously. I could tell he was holding something back. "What aren't you telling me, Jer?" I asked him warily. He sighed. His expression was almost apologetic. "You better brace yourself. It looks like another weird one." I groaned. "Get in. I'll fill you in on the way." Asterisk, 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 asterisk. On the drive to the Barker house, Jerry told me what had happened. Just after 8, the town dispatcher, Monica, our old dispatcher Karen died peacefully 2 years back, received a relay call from 911. The Barker's youngest daughter, Chloe, 6, said she was locked in her parents' room and that someone was inside her house. When asked if she could describe the intruders, all she could say was that the gray men had taken her family and they were in the house looking for her. Before the 911 operator could ask her anything else, Chloe had begun to scream piercingly in panicked horror. Then the line had gone dead. Pete and Joe had been sent, along with 2 of the new town cops, Brandon and Lars, a big blonde Swedish guy, as backup. They had arrived at the Barker residence no more than 5 minutes after the call had been made, but there was no sign of the Barkers. All 5 of them, John, Sophie, Chloe, Jessica, 9, and Max, 14, were gone. But what they did find there was disturbing. After clearing the house, they had called Vance. "What did they find?" I asked Jerry. "You'll see for yourself in just a couple minutes," he told me, gesturing out the windshield. I looked and saw we were already almost at the Barker's house. The place was encircled with cop cars, blue and red lights strobing. Jerry parked and we got out. The whole town police force was gathered, along with some detectives from the city, plus a forensics team from the state police. taking pictures and collecting evidence. Jerry led me towards the house, but a burly state trooper blocked my way with a stern expression. "Closed crime scene," he barked in an officious tone. I was confused for a second, then realized, because I technically wasn't on duty, that I wasn't in uniform. "It's cool," Jerry told him. "He's a cop." The trooper raised a suspicious eyebrow but finally stepped aside. We went up the front porch. The door was standing wide open but was blocked with crisscrossing strips of yellow crime scene tape. It was dark inside. The power was off. "Check this out," Jerry said, and took out a flashlight, switching it on and shining it on the front door. "Whoa," I said, surprised. What the hell? The doorknob was missing from the front door, leaving only an empty hole. Except, I registered after a split second, it wasn't missing. It was melted. A trail of liquefied steel that had since cooled and rehardened led down from the doorknob hole to a puddle on the floor, like candle wax. "It gets weirder," Jerry told me. "The electricity's out in the house, but it doesn't look like an outage. Seems like it was a power surge of some kind. All the light bulbs inside are burst." Hearing heavy footsteps approach behind us, we turned and saw Vance ascending the porch steps. "Thank God," he said upon seeing me. "Where the hell have you been? I was starting to worry you vanished right along with the barkers." I explained to him my car troubles and how Jerry had just happened along at the right time. "Afraid you can't go in there just yet," he told me when I finished. "Not until after the state boys are finished searching for clues." "What did Pete and Joe find in there?" I asked him. "Well, Jerry probably already told you. The power's out. But that's not all. Looks like there was some kind of standoff in there. Some of the windows and doors were barricaded, and they found a pile of spent .30 to 30 shells and a rifle on the floor of the living room, probably John Barker's rifle. But no sign of who or what he was shooting at. Upstairs, the doorknob of John and Sophie's bedroom, where their little girl made the call, is melted, just like that." He indicated the front door. "The phone was off the hook, dangling on its cord. Pete says it was still swinging when he and Joe entered the room, like she had just dropped it. If they had just gotten there maybe a minute sooner." He shook his head sadly. "Something about what he had just told me didn't seem right. You said the phone was off the hook. You mean the girl called 911 on a landline?" "Yeah. Why didn't they call for help on their smartphones? Everybody's got one these days. It wasn't like they were caught off guard. They had enough time to try barricading the house." Vance shrugged. "Who the hell knows? Nothing about this seems to make much sense." "Is that it?" I asked him. "No, there's more. Come with around back. I want you to see something." Vance led me around the house into the backyard. I began to detect a smell in the air, the smoky smell of burnt vegetation. A smell I associated with burning leaves in autumn. There were more cops and forensics back here, most of them crowded around something about 30 yards in the rear of the house. "First, look at this," Vance told me, and pointed to a wooden doghouse beside the back porch. I looked and halted in my tracks. Jesus, the doghouse was squared off with more crime scene tape. A large German shepherd was sprawled on the ground, half in and half out of the doghouse. It was dead, its mouth open, teeth bared in a frozen snarl. Its eyes were wide open and staring blankly at nothing. There were no marks on its body, no blood, no immediately apparent cause of death. It was still warm when Pete and Joe found it, Vance told me. "What the hell happened here?" I said, mostly to myself. "You think that's weird? You ain't seen nothing yet," Vance said grimly. He gestured with his head toward the crowd gathered at the edge of the backyard. I approached, and the closer I got, the stronger that smoky burning leaves smell became. The officers were formed in a loose circle around the perimeter of something, taking pictures and recording videos with their phones. I reached them and saw what was holding their attention. I stood, staring dumbly in shock and incomprehension. Sawhorses had been set up, cordoning off a perfect circle of scorched, blackened earth, about 50 feet in diameter. The grass had been charred to a fine black powder that was still faintly smoking. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. I rode with Vance back to the municipal building in town, where the police station was located. By then the story had broken to the nearest news outlets, and there was something of a media circus. If you could call 3 news vans and a corresponding number of reporters and cameramen a circus. Outside, along with a number of curious locals. We ignored their questions and entered the municipal building. I changed into a spare uniform I kept in my locker. The state police had already issued a statewide alert for the missing family. The detectives were going to conduct door-to-door interviews with the Barkers' closest neighbors. Vance wanted the town police force to patrol the back roads and be on the lookout for anything that could prove useful in the investigation. In other words, busy work. So we didn't feel like a bunch of dumb hicks standing around with our thumbs up our butts while the real police did all the important work. I entered Vance's office and found him sitting at his desk, in the middle of a conversation with Pete and Joe, who stood on the other side. Vance was telling them how he had just gotten a call from the FBI. A couple suits from the St. Paul branch of the Bureau were on their way. At this, Pete smirked at Joe and began to whistle the X-Files theme, which annoyed Vance, who told him to knock it off. Vance reminded him that 5 people, including 3 children, were missing, and this was not the time for joking around. Abashed, Pete apologized. Anyway, Vance went on, "I want you and Joe to cruise the roads north of town. Brandon and Lars are already covering the south roads. You," he pointed at me, "are going to ride with Jerry and..." Just then the radio unit on Monica's desk crackled to life. Lars' lightly Swedish accented voice come through the speakers. "Come in, dispatch. This is Unit 2. Come in, dispatch. This is Unit 2. Do you copy? Over." Monica spoke into the microphone. "Copy, Unit 2. This is dispatch." "Dispatch, is the chief there?" Over. "Unit 2, this is dispatch." "Yes, he's right here at his desk." Over. Dispatch, I need to speak to the chief urgently. We have a situation out here on Route 9 3 miles out of town." Over. At the word situation, we all tensed up a bit. Vance got up and quickly crossed over to Monica's desk. He leaned close to the microphone. "Unit 2, this is Vance. What do you mean by situation?" Over. Me and Brandon found one of them." Vance's face paled. I felt a skittering sensation in my guts. "Unit 2, what do you mean you found one of them?" "Clarify." Over. "We found one of the Barkers." "The boy? Max? He's alive." Me and Brandon came on him wandering down the side of the road, naked. "He's in bad shape. In shock, I think." "Jesus Christ," I heard Pete whisper. Lars went on, "We're taking him back to the station right now. Be there in about 20 minutes. Over. Copy. Unit 2, Vance said with forced composure, looking stunned by this development. "Bring him in through the rear door. There's kind of a crowd outside and we don't need any unwanted attention." Over and out. Roger, Chief. Over and out. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. 20 minutes later, Lars and Brandon guided 14-year-old Max Barker, naked except for a blanket wrapped around him, down the rear service corridor of the municipal building and into the chief's office. Vance had already radioed out the news on the police frequency. Lars wasn't kidding. The kid was a mess. He just shuffled along, moving almost automatically, like a robot. His face was completely blank, mouth gaping dumbly open, eyes vacant. Catatonic, they gently seated him on a couch. Vance dismissed Joe, Lars, and Brandon, telling them to go outside to control the crowd, which was getting agitated. Apparently one of the news vans had picked up word that one of the Barkers had been found on their scanner. They closed the door behind them, leaving only me, Pete, Vance, Dot, and the boy himself. Vance dragged up a chair and sat facing Max. "Max?" he asked him very softly. Max didn't respond. "Max, can you hear me? You're in the police station." "It's all right, son. You're safe now." No response. The boy didn't even seem to blink. "What happened to you, Max? What happened to your family?" "Nothing." "Max, please, you have to tell us what happened tonight. It's very important that we know so we can find the rest of your family. The sooner we know, the sooner we can help them." There was a very low, inaudible mumble. It took a moment for me to realize it had come from Max himself. "What was that, Max?" Vance asked, sounding encouraged. He leaned closer. "Please, Max, speak up." "You can't." A weak rasp. Max swallowed hard and tried again, straining, forcing his voice to work. "You can't help them. They're gone." He began to tremble. Tears ran down his cheeks. His tremble became a shudder, causing the blanket pulled around his shoulders to fall down a little, revealing something. Something odd. A small, perfectly rectangular patch of raised pink skin just below his left collarbone. It was about the size of a domino. It looked like a welt or a burn and appeared very fresh. Vance pointed at the mark on Max's shoulder. "How did you get that, Max?" "They did it to me." "Who?" Max's next words made my skin shudder. "The Sky People. That's how they keep track of us." He looked at Vance with an agonized, horrified expression, cheeks streaked with tears. They took us, just like they did last time. But this time, they didn't bring us back. They kept my family. They would have kept me too. But I tricked them. I played dead. They dumped me. They need to keep us alive until... He didn't finish. His shuddering worsened. Until what? Max. Vance pressed him. Max was silent. Then suddenly he began to scream hysterically in a panic, making us all jump. He thrashed around wildly, his face suddenly crazed. They're going to come back for me. Don't you understand? They thought I was dead, but they'll find out I tricked them and then they'll come back. They'll come back. They'll come back. Vance turned to me, alarmed. Call an ambulance, now! I pulled out a phone, but before I could dial 911, the door to the office slammed open. Two tall, muscular men in matching black suits and black ties over starched white shirts stood in the doorway. They had identical crew cuts. Their faces were clean-shaven and totally expressionless. Hey, Vance said, surprised and angry. Who the hell are you? We're with the government, one of the men replied in a flat, calm voice. We're taking over this investigation, the other said. Now wait a minute, Vance protested. I'm the town police chief here. I'm in the middle of interviewing a witness. Mr. Barker will be coming with us. The first man overrode him, his voice a monotone, his face perfectly neutral. God damn it, this is my jurisdiction. Our authority exceeds your jurisdiction, the second told Vance. Vance stood up to confront them, pointing his finger. You can't just come in here and... With shocking speed, the first black-suited man grabbed Vance by the front of his shirt and spun him around, pinning him face first to the wall. Hey, get your fucking hands off me! Vance struggled, but the man was stronger. He held him firmly while the second black-suited man crossed the office to where Max was sitting. He had stopped freaking out by then and was just whimpering quietly, seemingly in a daze. Me and Pete just stood speechless, watching this transpire with disbelief. I wanted to speak up, wanted to come to Vance's defense, but was intimidated into inaction. These guys didn't look like someone you wanted to mess around with. The second man helped Max to his feet and, with his arm draped over the boy's shoulder, led the boy unresistingly out of Vance's office. The first man released Vance and followed after his partner, leaving the room without a word, gently closing the door behind him. Vance smoothed out his shirt, pissed off and outraged at being manhandled. Sons of bitches, I can't believe they did that. I'm going to report their sorry asses to their field office for assaulting an officer. What are we going to do now, Chief? Pete asked him. That kid was our only lead on whatever the hell's going on. Damned if I know, Vance muttered, running his fingers through his hair, still flustered. It's out of our hands now. The feds have taken over. Just then someone rapped on the office door. Great. What now? Vance snapped in irritation. He opened the door. A young man and woman in business suits, very clean-cut and professional looking, stood there. Both of them holding badges. Chief, the man asked. Yeah, who are you? Vance inquired bluntly. I'm Agent Daniel Smithfield. This is my partner, Agent Kira Delaney. We're from the FBI. What? Wait a minute, Vance exclaimed, thunderstruck. If you're FBI, who the hell were those other guys? The two agents glanced at each other, confused. What other guys? The female agent said. Those two big guys in black suits. They were just here not 5 minutes ago. They took the Barker kid with them. The two agents looked at each other again, then back to Vance, perplexed and troubled. We don't know who you're talking about, the male agent replied. There are no other agencies involved in this case that we're aware of. We just arrived in your town less than half an hour ago. The three of us, me, Pete and Vance, gaped speechlessly at the two FBI agents, utterly baffled. Asterisk. It's been 5 days. Still no leads on the case, and no sign of the missing Barker family. And no idea who those goons in suits were who absconded with Max, or what they wanted with him, or where they could have taken him. One interesting fact came to light after they finished investigating the Barker house. Not only was the house's electrical system completely blown out, but also so was every portable battery-powered device within the house, including the family's mobile phones. That's why the 911 call was made on a landline phone, one of those old non-electric rotary dial ones, which apparently wasn't affected by whatever it was that happened there last Friday night. I don't think anyone's going to find the Barkers. Not us, not the state police, not the city cops or the feds or anyone else. I think we're looking a little too close to home, and the Barkers are somewhere far, far away. I don't know what the sky people wanted with them, but I have a bad feeling their intentions are not good. Like I said at the beginning, this is probably going to be the last time I have to deal with one of these freaky cases. I'm seriously considering turning in my badge and moving as far away from Minnesota as possible. But I wonder if it makes any difference where I go or how far I travel. You see, what really frightens me about all of this isn't just what happened to the Barkers. It's what I found the morning after, when I was shaving. I spotted something in the mirror, something on my left shoulder. A perfect rectangle of slightly raised, irritated skin, about the size of a domino.